Remember the Dolphins' offense? Speed, timing, precision passing, big plays all over the place. But what if that's not the vision for 2025? What if the Dolphins, as indicated by their free agent signings, intend for this to be a more physical offense? Now, the Dolphins still have a lot of work to do, but I believe Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel intend to build an offense that can physically impose their will against the defense. And if they're doing that, then that's very exciting if you're a Dolphin fan. And as you've already known, the Dolphins' offensive line has been under a lot of stress over the last few years because of injuries and the lack of talent, and that seemed to compromise the entire offense. And if you know anything about the offensive line, you would know that how the offensive line goes, the offense goes. And sometimes it could even trickle down to the defense as well. So the offensive line being healthy and being productive is something that's crucial for the Dolphins' offense and their whole team in general for them to have success in the NFL. When you look at teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, they have a great offensive line, and that typically leads to great offensive success. And Chris Greer made it known to the media that he intends to make the offensive line a priority this offseason. And James Daniels' signing was the first step in that direction. Now, the Dolphins did bring back Liam Eichenberg, so there is some cause for concern there. But I believe the Dolphins did that to mainly use him as a backup because of the amount of experience that he's had as a starter would make him a capable backup if he had to sub in for a few plays or maybe a game or two. Now, getting back to James Daniels, he's shown that he can be an effective guard in the NFL. Not only was he ranked number 15 and number 17 in run blocking and pass blocking in 2024, but he also showed an ability to get to the second levels and make blocks against linebackers and sometimes even safeties in the running game. He's pretty solid up front, and that he doesn't let quick pressures get to the quarterback inside. That's exactly what you need from interior offensive linemen, especially someone who doesn't get sent to the floor all the time. Chris Greer typically doesn't like to spend a lot of money on interior offensive linemen, so to pay James Daniels on average $8 million a year to play guard for 3 years is probably a little bit steep for him. But given the fact that James Daniel is coming back from an injury, gives the Dolphins an opportunity to get a high-quality guard at a cheaper price. And if there's anything that you know about Chris Greer, is that he likes to save a buck when it comes to spending on free agents. And sometimes that means dealing with players who are now coming back from injury to get them on a discount. Now, James Daniels did have an Achilles tear that he suffered in week 4 of the 2024 season, but he's expected to be fully back and recovered and clear for contact before training camp. And if you look at his time schedule compared to Jalen Phillips, who suffered a similar injury in 2023, though at a later date, Jalen Phillips was able to get back on time for training camp and be cleared for football activities. So when you consider his high rankings as a run blocker and his high rankings as a pass protector, then it just shows you the kind of quality of guard that they're getting in James Daniels. And even though it comes with a bit of a risk related to his injury, I guess the Dolphins feel that they have an adequate backup in Liam Eichenberg in the event that maybe on the off chance that James Daniels isn't ready on time when training camp or even the preseason begins. So when you look at it from the risk-reward factor, how much they're paying him versus the type of injury he had, then I think the Dolphins took a really good gamble here. I think he has an opportunity to get back to where he was prior to the injury, and that was a pretty darn good player. Even though $8 million is expensive for an offensive guard, when you consider what the Dolphins got for that $8 million, it really wasn't. The Dolphins had an opportunity to upgrade the guard position without having to spend the kind of money that Robert Hunt got in free agency last year. So when you look at James Daniels' salary relative to his experience and his skill set for the Dolphins, this was truly a no-brainer. The Dolphins have effectively upgraded their offensive line with getting a good football player in the building, and I hope the Dolphins don't stop here and believe that they can just fill out the rest of the offensive line in the draft, because they may be losing Teron Armstead, and they already lost a couple of guys on their offensive line. Robert Jones and Isaiah Wynn hasn't re-signed, and Kendall Lamb signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Dolphins really need to get some really good guys in here, because losing Lamb and losing Armstead and bringing back Eichenberg is not the way to build the offensive line in 2025. So when I look at this James Daniels signing, I see an opportunity for the offensive line to take a step forward, assuming that they can keep some other pieces intact. If Teron Armstead comes back, that'd be great. If Patrick Paul steps in, that's pretty good. If Austin Jackson comes back to health, then that'll be also good. So the Dolphins can keep adding to this offensive line so that they can become a team that can impose their will on the defense. And if you're a Dolphin fan, that's what you've been asking for years. Now, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, he's a big wide receiver. He's 6'2", 200 plus pounds, and he's definitely an outlier from what the Dolphins have on their receiving core. If you look at the Dolphins' top 3 receivers, those guys are a little bit smaller guys. They're all under 5'11", 5'10". So you really want a guy who can fight for contested balls and also be a threat in the red zone. And Nick Westbrook-Ikhine have shown that he can be that kind of guy. And for the Dolphins, not only does that give you another playmaker on offense that can catch the ball, he can make yards after the catch, and who can also fight for contested balls, you also have a guy who's very physical in the run game. Now, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are both good receivers, and they put in pretty good effort when it comes to the running game. But because of their size and the amount of strength that they could only have so much influence when it comes to run blocking. Not to mention, that's not really their strength. Their strength is really their speed and their ability to separate and get open. But with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine on the roster, now you can put him on the outside. You can pin these cornerbacks and allow these running backs to turn the corner, and that can give the Dolphins an element of their outside zone that they probably could not get with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill on the field. Also, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine can play on the outside, and as such, that can free up Tyreek Hill to play on the inside and in the slot. And the Dolphins really need Tyreek Hill to play in the slot more often because that can really unlock his abilities. Now, financially, this is a good move for the Miami Dolphins. Not only do they add a good football player, but they add him at a reasonable price, which can allow them to add more to their roster going forward in the offseason. Now, the last free agent I'd like to talk about is tight end Pharaoh Brown. Last season, he played for the Seattle Seahawks, and he's known as more of a classic wide tight end, a blocking tight end in the offense. But the Dolphins really need a guy on offense who can really be a good inline blocker because that'll take pressure off of Jonnu Smith so that he can be the 1A to 1B at the tight end position. And not only do you expect a guy like Jonnu Smith to attack teams in the middle of the field and in the seams, Jonnu Smith can also be helped by a guy like Pharoah Brown because when he comes into the game, he can be a devastating inline blocker that can help the running game, not only against linebackers, but also against defensive ends as well. So that pairing gives them a 1-2 combination that really most good teams have. A really good pass catching tight end and a really good run blocking tight end. Now, it would be good to have both of those traits in one player, right? A guy like George Kittle comes to mind. But for the Dolphins, this is the talent that's available to them right now. So to me, signing Pharaoh Brown is really a good signing by the Miami Dolphins. Not only is it a low-cost option, but he's a guy who comes in here with a lot of experience and a lot of ability. And to me, this signing also helps to reinforce the notion that the Dolphins are trying to make themselves a more physical team on offense. So when you talk about changing the identity of a team, it starts off with the players that you get on the roster. And the Dolphins too often have been relying on a lot of finesse players on offense. Now, the Dolphins did sign Alexander Madison at the running back position, and it remains to be seen how physical he is. Obviously, there's some stats that show that he's pretty good at converting third and fourth and shorts, but I doubt that he's the kind of physical running back that can change the offense for the Miami Dolphins. When I think of a physical running back, I'm thinking of a guy like Chris Brooks, who they drafted in the 7th round a few years ago, a guy who can have a big impact in between the tackles and run the ball downhill. The Dolphins need that kind of run on the team to add to their physicality on their offense. So the Dolphins added a physical guard, a physical wide receiver, a physical tight end. They'll soon add a physical running back. And then if they add another physical guard, now you can see the identity of the offense start to shift a little bit. Adding 5 more guys on the offense that have a certain level of physicality, to me, that can make the difference in how the Dolphins construct their offense in 2025. Adding these 3 players will already shift the offense's direction dramatically, but let's see how it shifts their identity. And can McDaniel take advantage of his play calling in order to take advantage of these new guys that they're adding? And of course, they're going to add more guys to the draft, so I look forward to that as well. Physical offensive linemen, physical wide receivers, physical tight ends, physical running backs. And to me, that's how you change your team from being a finesse team to a physical team in 2025. So let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment in the section below. I would love to hear your thoughts on the subject. Do you think the Dolphins could be a more physical team in 2025? Or do you think that these guys are just brought in as just replacements to fill holes in the roster? Let me know in the comments section below. I would love to hear your thoughts. So that's it for this video. If you like this video, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button to get all the latest content, and leave a comment in the section below. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.